All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar on antimicrobial functional performance. I'm Courtney Cruzen. I'm the Vice President of Sourcing and Product Development at Burr. And also joining us today are Julie Brown, our VP of Sales, and Sarah Haas, who is the Marketing Director of Outdoor Retailer. So great to be here. And just to preface about why I decided to choose this subject for today's presentation, of course, is because of our current situation in the world. But I also am working on performance fiber. Burr is a performance fiber that provides comfort, and it's all about comfort. And it's all about how do we really deliver on not just performance for outdoor industry, for every single everyday use, but how do we also make sure that the products that we're developing for the market are the longest lasting, highest quality products for textile applications. So the goal of this presentation is to have an overview of what are antibacterial and antimicrobial differences and how are they applied at the fiber level and the topical finish level. So before we start, if you're having trouble to receiving any of the audio, then you can click on the question in the upper corner of the webcast interface and select Test My System Now. If you have any questions, they can be asked at any point the presentation. That is on the left side of your screen. So look for a box labeled Ask a Question, and those questions are private. They go directly to the speaker, and we will answer those in the last approximately 15 minutes. You are being recorded. It's a live event, and it's going to be provided on demand publicly later. And you can access this presentation 15 minutes after the webcast concludes at outdoorretailer.com. All right, so let's jump into it. Which fabrics are more prone to microbes and bacteria? Right, every day we are living and sweating and breathing in our textiles and in every surface area that we touch. And of course, it's not just about protecting ourselves, it's that microbes and microorganisms on textiles can speed up the degradation of that textile. And as we know, cotton is hydrophilic, so that means it loves water. And what does water do when it sits in an environment for too long? Develops mildew. And that is also for other cellulosic and natural fibers. Now, nylon and polyester are oleophilic, so they are more susceptible to oil bacterial buildup. So why do we use nonwovens in medical fabrics? And now there's such a huge demand, of course, for melt-blown nonwoven fabric. If you're interested to find out more about specific nonwovens that are developed globally and locally here in the US, you can go to the NCSU, North Carolina State University, and check out the Nonwovens Institute. So we use fabrics in nonwovens because they don't absorb microbes and bacteria as much as knits and wovens. And when we look at testing and studies that are currently being done, especially about COVID-19, is that we have proven facts that show that the virus can live in and still be detectable in plastic for up to 2 to 3 days. So that's really an important thing for footwear and sporting goods. This, of course, is changing daily, but as far as new studies that come out, but really important that we are constantly keeping apprised of those studies. And of course, we're not just talking about COVID-19. Think about how many millions and thousands different of bacteria live on your everyday surfaces. I, for one, do not ever put my bag or a suitcase on top of a bed when I go traveling because I have no idea where that suitcase has been. And I also do my best to wipe down my yoga mat every time with a bleaching solution. But that's just what we live in every day. And there's good bacteria as well, so it's not all bad. So what is an antimicrobial fabric, right? So antimicrobials control, destroy, and suppress the growth of microbes. So they just don't let the microbes grow. And there is kind of a definition you can look at between antimicrobial versus antibacterial. There is a really great presentation that is, you can just search it from YouTube. It's by FIT Design Studio, F-I-T-T Design Studio. And they do a great presentation on what is an antimicrobial fabric, sportswear secrets. And it's about an 11-minute presentation. You can check that out. He talks about this point on why there is a difference between the definition and why when we do testing, which I'll talk more about later, there's only some of the testing measurements only test for certain bacteria. All right. So what is the classification of different antimicrobial finishes? So in what application would we be adding antimicrobial? We can add that to any substrate, any kind of hygiene finishes, or it can be an aesthetic finish. And somebody is just asking that they missed the website I was just talking about. It is a YouTube video, and I can put the link in. We can send the link out. It is by Fit Design Studio. You can Google, what is antimicrobial fabric sportswear secrets? All right. So there are, of course, different types of antimicrobial agents. We have natural agents that are natural inherent in the environment, including fungi, different kind of good bacteria that comes out of trees. We can use different antimicrobial agents. Even turmeric has antimicrobial properties naturally. When I lived in Taiwan for 5 years, I was there and worked a lot on different applications of using natural resources in the environment to impregnate those into the fiber stage. And one most interesting project I worked on was with chitosan and using shells by taking shells and exoskeletons of crabs and shrimp and breaking them down into the nano form, into a nano powder, and extruding that in the fiber. And also the scarf here that I'm wearing, this one is cellulosic. It is a functional rayon where about 30% of this is derived from fish scales. And the fish scales have also antimicrobial properties that are natural and inherent in that exoskeleton. So those can be impregnated, and then I don't have to wash this as often as I would, right? Super comfortable. It's all built in to the technology. So I'll be speaking more about that. So we've got natural antimicrobial agents and, of course, synthetic. Synthetic antimicrobial agents are going to be your strongest and yes, and somebody just asked about peppermint. You're right. So just to preface, this is not an extensive presentation of everything that's available out on the market. There, of course, are many other variables, right? So this is just the most information that I've pulled up. All right, so synthetic antimicrobial agents are definitely going to be your highest performing agents because they are metals and oxides. So using silver, copper, and zinc. These are the three primary agents that are used in the performance space. And we are impregnating them or blending them into the polymer directly. And then you also have benefits, for instance, with zinc. You can blend that into the fiber polymer stage and you'll get antimicrobial. And also, what else does zinc do? It's UPF, right? So you get automatic UPF resistance, UV fighting, and you get the antimicrobial properties. So looking to nature, looking to synthetic to help us develop these. All right, so let's look at different applications of how you get these agents into the fabric. We have topical applications, which are using applications by patting, exhaust, or spraying. There's also patting, which is dipping in a solution. The issue with most of these topical applications is that you don't have high durability. Most of these applications will only last between 10 to 20 time washes at a home laundering wash. And also, you can only impregnate the fabric to a certain point. It can't absorb anymore after a certain point. Then if you're spraying a topical spray, you also have a risk of inhalation and other environmental concerns. So this is applied, of course, the fastest way to apply a topical agent, but it's not the best long-term solution. So the best long-term and longest lasting solution is to build those agents into the yarn dope. So this is developing a functional fiber, and this is a patent cross-section of a patented burr yarn. And just as a visual to show you how we impregnate those different particles into the yarn dope. And this is what's called a master batch. So before you can even go to the spinning stage, you got to have your ingredients to put into the spinner. So we need to have spun-in additives at the master batch stage. And we can take these antimicrobial agents at the melt and spinning dope solution and incorporate them into the polymer matrix. So what does that mean? The polymer matrix is the polymer, and I do not have a PhD in polymerization, so do not quote me. We're all learning together. But the polymer modification can be, this can be applied at different stages. And you can think about if you've got a straw, and your straw is the outside of the fiber, and you're trying to pour different pieces into that straw. When you modify a polymer, you can break it down to mini rocks. You can also put it as an encapsulation. The best option is using nanotechnology. And there's different applications, different forms of how you do that process, but getting it down to the finest form, then it will develop that, it will have a higher surface area for the particles that make up the function and the performance that you want to achieve into the fiber. And I'll talk more later about how we use that at Burr to use our triple chill effect, because somebody's asking about wicking, and yes, I will talk about that later. So what is available on the market right now? What can you go out and supply and purchase for an application to your products? The topical finishes that are mostly out there: Haiku, Silvador, Viral Off by Polygene, Excusez-moi, has also another product, and of course Microban. The limitations with a lot of these topical finishes is that it can have an effect on the hand feel. And so when you have a beautiful fabric with gorgeous hand feel, and you want to have an antimicrobial added to it, it could potentially, based on the weight of the fabric and the variables of the yarn size and the construction that is used, you can definitely affect and make that hand feel slightly more stiff in the fabric. Also, when you're applying topical finishes, you're going to have high water use, heat, and energy that you're going to need to input into that process. Definitely, it's the more economical, but it also is not the longer lasting and not going to give you the high quality performance that you need. So when we embed, we talked about the polymer embedding the agent into the fiber. There are brands out there like Ecstatic, Active, COPTECH, and Microban also has an option. This is a permanent, inherent, high performance performance that is embedded into the yarn, right? So you're getting the longest lasting. This is going to last for the lifetime of that garment. The industry standard is to test it at 50 times wash. And all of the claims from these brands will show you that after 50 times wash, they can kill the bacteria. And I'll show you some supporting examples of that. Of course, limitation or the difficulty in developing these is the high engineering cost and time that takes into creating these. But that's why we're creating technology. So here are some examples of that. We at Burr, we have our yarn is engineered. It is at the yarn stage. Ecstatic is a silver, and you can see the cross section there of the silver. And COPTECH uses copper technology, and I'll talk about Active later. So you can see how, of course, when you're trying to decide which of these to use, looking at your performance ratio of washes versus performance. What are the environmental implications? For example, silver has a high fish kill rate, which means that if that silver gets into the environment, it's bad for the ocean, right? And there's tons of testing, and that's kind of another topic as far as that. But thinking about what are the environmental implications of what you're choosing to use, and then of course, what are your cost factors? Now, one of the things that's great from an environmental standpoint when we're looking at performance is, for instance, an example of how much water that I need to use. If I have an untreated fabric and garment, I'm going to have to wash that at least 50 times a year, potentially, as an average washing of people that normal consumers will do. If I treat it with a antimicrobial finish, or better, I have a performance yarn that's inherent, I don't have to use the same amount of water to create the same development. And somebody's asking about how do antimicrobial agents impact the biodegradability of the fabric. So it is, that's a good question. So we'll get back to that one about biodegrading. When it comes to another case study I wanted to mention about looking at the cost between investing in a performance fiber versus using a topical agent is from my friends at COPTECH. So COPTECH uses copper. It can be impregnated in any surface. They do multiple surfaces. They are the lab, and the company was founded in Chile, but they have 4 different global locations. They started off in 2014. They had a pilot-sized test run. They did 10,000 pairs of socks that were tested with the COPTECH technology, and they originally sold their generic, non-using, just the regular socks without the COPTECH, sold for $4. They increased that price by 2 times, and they sold these socks at $8 a piece with the performance and the marketing to prove that. And their volume exponentially grew in the Chilean market. And the population of Chile at the time of this volume in 2018 is 17 million people is the population. And they've sold over 1 million pairs to this small population. So this just shows a correlation of if you have technology and you prove it, then people will pay for it. All right, and then another example from Active is showing, and Active has done extensive research and government compliance to make these claims, right? We can't, and I had a conversation yesterday with my friend at Active is by Ascend Materials, and I had a conversation with, my friend Harry at the company yesterday, and if there are any specific questions, I can connect you with them about how they have done this to make these claims. All right, so here's another test result explanation about, and this is from COPTECH. So this shows here on the left-hand side, you've got the E. coli test, and the right-hand side is the Staphylococcus aureus, so the staph. And this shows what was the control fabric and what was the fabric that was treated with COPTECH. And you can see that this plate count after 24 hours of adding the bacteria, that there was a reduction of the bacteria by 99.9% using the COPTECH fabric. So that's what this shows. If you'd like to see more specific test results and testing, then I can provide that to you separately, because there's a lot of parameters around testing. So when you're deciding who to use, make sure that you're checking the certifications. For instance, COPTECH has a patented technology. It's in a tier 1 registration, and make sure that everything is validated by independent third-party testing. There is also, you can reference the International Antimicrobial Council. All right, and I just want to check here. There's another question here, and okay, great. Well, yeah, somebody's asking about if microbial agents impact the biodegradability of a fabric, and no, they don't affect biodegradation in synthetics. Thank you, John. Okay, so then my last point, not my last point, but a very important point to emphasize is the FDA. And we have had measurements in place for over 30 years of US federal regulations that have not been changed. They primarily, the FDA rules and the way that you can speak about antimicrobial resistance to the consumers primarily has only applied to the agricultural industry. So unless you want to be a pesticide, you have to figure out how to speak about this correctly. And you have to be extremely careful, because if you're making any consumer claims that aren't backed up, and if you don't have the correct not just patenting, but FDA approval, then you're in violation of the law and you can be arrested for it. So if you need more information about this, then I can connect you with industry product stewards who have done very extensive information into how to get FDA approval. Not an easy process, but it is. But it's definitely what we have to do. So if you want to see more information or specifics about the type of terminology that you're legally allowed to use, you can go directly to the U.S. Food and Drug Administration and search for antimicrobial resistance information. All right, so the overall focus here is, what is the opportunity cost? What I'm meaning by this slide here is, what is the opportunity cost from having a non-reusable versus a reusable item? And then this correlation is talking about, why am I gonna use a topical finish? Okay, it's cheaper, but it's gonna fall apart like a plastic bag would very easily, versus I'm going to invest in technology that is going to be long lasting. I'm going to have high performance of that material, and I'm going to be able to let that last for the life of the garment or the life of that material. And so in what we do at Burr is adding that performance. So in the very beginning, I talked about comfort, and not just about the comfort of making sure that we are protected against microbes, but what is the opportunity for performance yarns in the performance yarn space. And at Burr, we have proven performance of what we call our triple chill effect. So that is taking specific cooling minerals and testing those with the QMAX standard. We also have performance in wicking, and we test those on active wicking application, on active wicking, and of course, rapid drying. So we do a quick drying rate, and we test these standards with third-party testing labs at Intertech. And we primarily use the Intertech Taiwan office and AATCC standards. So again, it's inherent permanently at the fiber stage, at the polymer stage, and we are constantly making this technology better and moving towards developing this for the market to bring the best performing fibers that we can for the sportswear industry and globally for any application. And if you have any further questions or things that we don't get answered today, I'm running a little bit ahead of schedule so we can have time for more questions. Then you can send me an email. Here's my email at ccruzen@burr.com. And you can also visit burr.com for information that is there globally. So let me turn this over. I'm looking through the different questions here. We've got about 11 different questions, and I want to make sure that I got those answered. Okay.
Hey, Courtney, thanks so much for educating everybody on the call this afternoon about antimicrobials. We have several questions coming in, and definitely keep them coming in. One of the questions is asking, let's do a little housekeeping here. Will this deck be shared after the presentation?
Yes, that would be a Sarah question. So Sarah, do we need to give you authorization for sharing the deck? Or how do we do that? In the very beginning, we talked about how this would be available 15 minutes after the presentation. So if you need specifically this, you can send me an email. And if you have a specific request to get the deck, then please email it, because what will be available is this recording after the presentation.
Great. Thanks so much. Next question up is going to be, do most brands go through the FDA process, or is that figured out by the ingredient brand?
Yeah, good question. So the FDA process is applicable to the ingredient brand. So the agent that you're purchasing needs to have all of those parameters in place. I have not applied for FDA approval, so I can't tell you about what that is. When you, as a brand, are purchasing a performance fiber and or a topical treatment, then before you are in the process of when you're doing the testing, you need to make sure that you've checked that they have all of the testing available, and that they're used. The majority of mills that you're going to work with when you're sourcing textiles, they're all going to be using industry standard topical treatments, or they'll recommend a specific fiber that they think is going to work best. So it's up to you as the brand to decide what are your parameters around what you're looking to achieve. So if you want to say, I am the highest, most performing antimicrobial fabric out in the entire world, what does that mean, right, for you as a brand? So you need to look at those opportunities and just do a cost to ratio analysis on what is available out on the market. And majority of time you can go to the mill and you can ask your fabric mill that you're working with or your supplier. We do this every day at Burr, is the buyer comes to us and says, I want to develop this fabric and I want to make it better with Burr and I need it to be antimicrobial. So then we go to our partners and find out how do we deliver that for you. And so you also need to work on your testing specs. So you need to decide what testing measurements are you going to use. You can go to aatcc.com or .org, excuse me. So that's the American Apparel, Textile and Colorists and Chemists, AATCC. So go to AATCC. They are the American standard for testing, and they have all the antimicrobial information on the website.
Great. Thanks so much. Next question is, can AM finishes be applied to Burr fabric?
Yes, of course. Yeah, we can. At Burr, our technology works with hydrophilic finishes. So we need to make sure that the finish is the correct one, and we will work with you to add a finish. And we are also doing internal testing and would like to have that also available at the fiber stage. But it's like I said, it's all about engineering time to put into that. So when we have more of that testing available, happy to share those details with you. We can talk more about it over email.
Great. Next question, are our products spun yarn? And also, do we have yarns available for the hosiery industry?
So all of our Burr yarns, because we are developing the technology at the polymer level, I shouldn't say all, we have different options, but the majority of our yarn is going to be at our filament. So that means the function is in the polyester and or the nylon. I can go back and look at the slide that I mentioned about the yarn dope stage, the fiber cross section. And so if you look at this image here about the yarn dope, this cross section, there's 4 grids here. So the bottom left, this is a patented yarn that we have done. This is using the core is a cooling nylon and polyester. So that's the performance. And then is wrapped with a viscose rayon, and the core is a spandex. So we can also do this for denim. And so we can follow the same structure using the cooling nylon and polyester as a filament. And then you add the spun as a viscose rayon or a cotton, and that can be applied at this stage. So it can be applied. We have done applications and done beautiful. Our technology works beautifully in like drapey cellulosic rayon items. And it also performs great in denim items, which is using a patented denim yarn. So I think that answers the question.
Awesome. Thanks so much for that. Somebody who's wanting to know what the website is for AATCC and what it stands for.
Okay, yes. So AATCC is let me just pull it up so I say it correctly, American Association of Textile Chemists and Colorists. So AATCC is a nonprofit that is the professional organization that is based out of the Research Triangle in North Carolina. And it provides all of the testing measurements that we follow in the industry, the U.S. industry, for test method development, quality control materials, educational development, and networking for textile and apparel professionals throughout the world. I'm just reading directly from their website. So it's www.aatcc.org. And you can find all of the measurements from there. If you're a small brand, to the biggest brands, making sure that you are on time with what's going on in the market. And what else are we going to say about that? So you can see, I don't have it in the presentation here, but I can send, if you're interested to see more about some examples on just testing in general, that follows an AATCC measurement. There is a microbiological analysis that is run, and that is using, you have the main test that you use is AATCC 100. And when you state to the mill, okay, I want you to use this testing standard, you need to also state which type of bacteria do you want them to test for. So I'd mentioned how the difference between an antimicrobial, let's see, let me show you. For instance, here, this test results. So we've got, when I didn't do this test result, but if I were to do this test result, I would go to my third-party testing and say, I need you to do a AATCC 100, and I need you to use to test for E. coli and Staphylococcus aureus, which is like when you hear about people getting staph infection, that's what it is. This is staph. And these numbers here are those specific numbers from the testing standard that apply to that bacteria. So I can also, and what this means here is that if you have you add bacteria, so you impregnate, but you add the bacteria to the surface of the fabric, and then you let it sit for 24 hours in a controlled environment. And then you come up with how much of that bacteria was still on the fabric after it finished that test. And if it's been treated, then we can claim that it has a 99.9% reduction in the bacteria that it was in contact with. That's what that's saying. Cool.
Great. A few other questions, more so about burr. Do we have representation in Asia?
Yes. Well, we have, when you say representation, can you clarify?
They just say representation. So let's talk about our Burr Taiwan office.
Okay, great. Yeah. So when you go to burr.com, you can see we are a U.S. company that is located in Atlanta, Georgia. But we have our branch office that is in Taiwan. It's in Taoyuan. And why we're in Taiwan is because Taiwan is the leader in performance yarn technology in the world and have the best scientists to bring the technology. You can look at websites like Patagonia. Patagonia is very transparent about their supply chain. And they have an interactive map on Patagonia.com where you can look at a map of Taiwan, and they will actually pinpoint the suppliers and the mills that they use in Taiwan. And they source the majority of all of their recycled polyester and performance functional fabrics out of Taiwan. So definitely that's why Burr is there. And you can also go to check out if you want more information about the industry and who are the suppliers and just an overview of the textile supply chain industry specific to Taiwan. You can go to ttf.org, so TTF.org. And that is the Taiwan Textile Federation. So the Taiwan Textile Federation is a NGO nonprofit that is partially funded by the Taiwanese government and partially funded by the mills to, they put on trade shows, they help facilitate if you were wanting to go and source for fabrics in Taiwan and find out more about the technology, you can contact with TTF and they will help facilitate connecting you with mills there. And then happy to also help to make that connection or develop a fabric that you're looking to develop with our added burr technology in both knits and wovens.
Great. Can you tell the group that's listening in some of the antibacterial finishes that you are familiar with? I know you talked about several in the presentation, but are there any more that you would like to, dive a little bit deeper on or add to that list?
Well, from what I've used previously is primarily, and of course I don't want to promote, other topical brands, really than others, I should say, but is, if you're looking at a topical application, probably my first recommendation I would go to is Polygene, which is they've just done extensive FDA approval for this Viral Off. So Viral Off is their branded name. That's by Polygene. That's the one here. So they have proven that they can have a 99% reduction of viruses in 2 hours. And you can go to check out Viral Off Polygene technology and Google that. Ecstatic is widely used primarily by Lululemon. So Lululemon has been using that in their yoga pants for many seasons now. And it definitely silver's got great application, great performance. Downside, like I mentioned, is environmental concerns. So there hasn't been really proven leaching of the silver that comes out of the fiber, but the actual processing of silver, when you develop it from an ionic stage, it can be degrading to the environment. But it definitely, it's very proven to eliminate odor. It's permanent, and it has a thermodynamic, anti-static, and of course, antimicrobial properties. So you can check that out. The other thing that I will mention about, there was a train of thought I had, I just lost, but now I'll go back to that. When it comes to copper technology, COPTECH is got really great, I think the price point for their technology is very good. They're less expensive than silver because copper, when you just on the market, copper is a lot less expensive. Actually, silver can be up to, if you look at the comparative costing between a silver at the material stage versus a copper, silver actually in most cases can be 100 times more cost for like one particle of silver versus a particle of copper. So as far as getting the performance, like bang for your buck, I would definitely go with more of, you have to test it, right, to what your standards are, of course, but I would more lean towards COPTECH or the Active. Active is, their Active Protect is the trademarked name for their, for what they call kind of a self-cleaning. It's actually a resin by the Ascend Performance Materials. And the only downside with Active is that it's only available as a nylon 6. Ascend is the largest manufacturers of nylon 6 in the world. And they have, again, put tons of active, this is the one here of their claims that shows that they use active zinc ions to attack the polar end groups and block the glycoprotein channels. So when I'm looking at it from the best balance of environmental versus performance, I think that using zinc is got great properties. And then I mentioned that zinc can be naturally UPF and also provide these antimicrobial properties naturally. And so it's proven to have a 99.9% efficacy in reducing the bacterial growth. So if there's any more information about that, then I can connect you, with them, or just reach out to Ascend directly. That's Ascend Performance Materials. They are headquartered in Houston, Texas. And they do testing also in Florida, but go ahead. Yeah.
Awesome. Next question up. Does copper have the same negative environmental impact that silver does?
I don't have an exact answer for that one. So who's asking that? You can send me an email about that and I'll help. I'll introduce you to the guys at COPTECH. They've got extensive research that they've done, comparative analysis on environmental aspects. I will tell you that when I was speaking with my friends at Ascend, and when they were looking at the options of, do they use zinc versus copper versus silver, they decided to use zinc because it is it's naturally inherent in the membrane of an organism, whereas a copper and a silver, they're metals. So we can't say right now what that long-term degradation process would be, but as far as looking at from a biodegradable standpoint or environmental standards, I think that what we have thus far proven is that of these three options, silver, copper, and zinc, that zinc is going to be the less degrading, and it's not going to last as long as a copper and a silver would, because it's different types of organism versus a metal.
Are these antimicrobial treatments safe to inhale if you were to use them on a mask per se?
When they're at the topical stage?
Yes.
Is that the question? Okay. So yes. So if you, once you apply it to the fabric, I'll go back to, there's this slide about the topical applications. So the only time that it would be bad for you is when you're actually applying the topical treatment. When it's applied to the surface of the fabric, it's impregnated into the fibers. By impregnated, I mean that it's absorbed into the fibers. It's not inside the fiber, it's on the surface of the fiber. So that means that that's why it will still wash off, but it's fixed into the fiber and it's finished so that there's no antimicrobial that is being inhaled, to my knowledge, because what it's doing is it's just blocking anything from building and attaching to it. It's not giving off any kind of chemical that you're going to inhale. All this antimicrobial is doing is saying that anything that attaches to it, it's not going to be able to grow on that surface. Does that make sense?
Has Burr worked with we're bouncing around here a little bit, but has Burr worked with the hosiery industry?
Yes, we have. we've done some developments with socks and seamless and some tubular hosiery items. We're currently running some tests on a opportunity. It's not available on the market. It's being tested, but you can send us an email about when we have more information about it. But it's it's by the hosiery mill that is developing an engineered knit mask, and the mask the entire thing is one piece. I don't have it physically here, else I'd show it to you. And so that is a hosiery concept, which is great because it's using the tubular construction with loops on either end, and you can have two layers. It's extremely comfortable, and that would be an example of where we're adding our burr fiber technology into the tubular hosiery manufacturing.
Well, I think one of our last questions coming up here, will steaming to disinfect surface affect the performance of performance fibers?
Steaming of disinfecting the fabric surfaces harm performance fibers. So when you are, okay, I see what you mean. Yeah, so the question is, you have an inherent performance fiber, for instance, at burr, our fiber is performance fiber. And when it needs to have a antimicrobial or topical agent added to the fabric, and you need to apply steam by heat and water, as long as the finish is hydrophilic, it won't change the properties of the performance, number one. Number two is it won't harm the surface of the fiber because the fiber is already spun into the yarn and the construction. And so the mill knows which measurements to follow, and we've done extensive testing. So the performance fiber is not going to, for instance, melt or degrade or fall apart when it's being applied in a high temperature stage. And another example on that would be if you are adding a sublimation print to a performance fiber polyester, you run it through a sublimation machine that presses and prints, and it's through a heat press application. We also run the fabric through calendering or ciré, which then can, it flattens or adds a shiny effect to the fabric, and that doesn't affect the performance of the fibers. All right, so I think, did we answer all of our questions that we have?
Yes, we have, I think, maybe about 5 more minutes. So if you all have any additional questions, please bring those in. One other question somebody submitted: what is the testing that we use for testing the burr triple chill effect for our active wicking?
So we do, and you can go to burr.com again and see those. But we follow the active wicking measurements of, and just look at something. So we do AATCC 135. So we use all the AATCC, if I can say that right. So that's what we follow for active wicking, and our standards. Standard for active wicking we use is AATCC 197. And we set our standards higher than a lot of brands, or we test to meet the requirements of the brands. And our goal is to keep the wicking under 3 minutes. So that's how much time that it takes for the water to climb. The majority of our fabrics test at under 1 minute in wicking. So you want to have a fast wicking. And then we use the dry time AATCC 201. And the goal there is to be above 1 to 1.5 milliliters per hour to pass those standards. So these three triple-chill effect, just in summary, cooling is using QMEX, wicking is a AATCC 197, and rapid drying is AATCC 201.
Great. Thanks so much for answering all those questions, Courtney. If you guys have additional questions, how would they get a hold of you outside of this presentation?
Yep. So go ahead and shoot me an email here at ccruzen@burr.com, and then we'll just go from there and see how we can help you out. It's good experience, and thank you for everybody for joining. All right, Sarah, are we good? And Sarah will be sending out the direct link to the video. You're welcome, Milton. I think the link will be automatically sent out 15 minutes after. All right. Have a great day, everyone.